Assalamu alaikum. Once upon a time, there was a king. He had a daughter who was very beautiful and as white as snow. Everybody called her Snow White. Snow White was very young when her mother passed away. The king married again. The new queen was very beautiful. She did not like Snow White. When Snow White grew up a little, the queen saw her beauty and went green with envy. She decided to have Snow White killed. She called up a hunter, gave him a lot of money and asked him to take Snow White to the forest and kill her. The hunter kidnapped Snow White and brought her to the forest. He was about to kill Snow White, took pity when he saw her beauty. He left Snow White in the forest and went back. Snow White had never left the royal palace. She got very frightened in the forest. At night, pitch black darkness spread all around. She began to wander here and there. Then she saw a light burning far away. She hurried towards it. It was a small house. She went to the door of the house and knocked. When nobody answered for a long time, she entered the house. She looked over all the house. It was totally empty, but the decorations and goods indicated that somebody certainly lived there. 7 soft and warm beds were also laid out in a room. Snow White was astonished because a house in this dense forest was a strange thing, and what was more, it was absolutely empty. Anyway, she was very hungry. She looked about in the kitchen and found delicious foods in the pots and pans. She ate heartily and then got into the bed. That house belonged to the dwarfs of the forest who lived their way from the eyes of the people. Late at night, when the dwarfs returned, they saw that the door to the house was not closed properly. After coming in, they saw that food was missing from the kitchen. They were very upset and began to search the house. When they entered their bedroom, they found Snow White. The dwarfs were very surprised to see her. The next morning, when Snow White woke up, she found herself surrounded by the dwarfs. She was scared at first, but then mustered some courage and told the dwarfs her story. The dwarfs were very touched by her story. They allowed Snow White to live with them. Snow White stayed all the day in the house, cooked the food, did the washing, and took care of the house. The dwarfs stayed out all day for work. In the evening, when they come home, together with the Snow White, they played a lot of games. They were all very happy, and Snow White had forgotten about the royal palace and her cruel stepmother, the queen. The queen had a magical mirror which told her every day that she was the most beautiful woman in the world. But one day the mirror said that she no longer is the most beautiful woman in the world because Snow White has grown up and now she is the most beautiful girl in the world. The queen was very angered upon hearing that. She sentenced the hunter to death. Then disguised herself as an old woman and went to the forest in search of Snow White. She found the dwarf's house after some time. At that moment, Snow White was standing in the window and taking in the view outside. The queen gave her a red apple and said, "Your beauty reminds me of my own daughter. Here, eat this apple. I will make you more beautiful." Snow White did not know that the apple she is being given is poisoned. She ate half the apple. Upon eating, she felt dizzy and fell down. The queen was very happy at the success of her scheme, and she went back laughing. The dwarfs arrived there after some time. When they saw Snow White's condition and the half-eaten apple lying beside her, they realized that the queen has struck. They fed Snow White a medicine. The medicine stopped the poison from spreading in Snow White's body, but she was still unconscious. The dwarfs made a glass coffin and laid Snow White in it. It was beyond their power to bring Snow White back to her senses. They guarded the coffin day and night and prayed to God to help wake Snow White up. One day, a prince came that way. He was amazed to see a beautiful girl lying in a glass coffin. Upon his inquiring, the dwarfs told him the whole story. The prince said, "I can wake Snow White up, if you allow me." The dwarfs gladly agreed and opened the coffin. The prince took a dry leaf and tickled Snow White's nose with it. Snow White's nostrils flared. She sneezed loudly and woke up. The dwarfs shook the earth with their cheers of joy. The prince was accorded great warmth and hospitality. After some days, the prince, accompanied by Snow White, went to her father and told him the whole story. Upon hearing this, in a fit of anger, the king beheaded his wicked queen. After that, the prince and Snow White were married, and she went on to live with him in his palace. The 7 dwarfs often came to visit Snow White and brought gifts of all sorts for her. Snow White was always happy to see them and entertained them lavishly. They lived happily like that ever after. Thank you.